All right, everyone, welcome to our fifth week. So in Blackboard, we are in the Shell 3 folder, week 5. But before we get into that, I just want to make some things clear, clarify some things. One is, should you have an issue logging into the Cengage MindTap ebook, our text, it's in Blackboard, it's integrated in there. Of course, you all know that. It's literature, composition and literature. And then either the number 42228 or 44136, depending on your section. Now, it's my understanding that some of you are having issues with entering in the passcode you were originally given, and you're receiving a message saying that your temporary access has expired, and it's prompting you to buy a subscription. Of course, don't do that. The way that the passwords are delivered or have been delivered at Georgia Northwestern, we have a high school coordinator, and that high school coordinator coordinates with somebody from Sonoraville High School, and then that person delivers this information to Mr. Churchwell. So this is all to say, if you have ongoing issues with passwords, I'm trying to get that solved right now with those coordinators at GNTC and at the high school. But if you need immediate assistance with your password, email Mr. Churchwell, because I don't have any of these things. All that I do is integrate the text in our Blackboard course, of course, assign the assignments, and grade the work that you submit. But I'm not privy to the passwords or anything like that. So I can't do anything to help you guys out. So just saving some time there, I am not the person to contact if you have a password issue, your access has expired. But we're trying to get this resolved, everybody, and I understand it's frustrating. Due to these, circumstances we're all in right now, the chain of communication, since we're not together, it gets a little fragmented, and that makes things a little more difficult and things take a little longer. So trying to get this resolved for you all to make it easier and to make sure that you can do what you need to do. Okay. Also, if you are in Blackboard 44136, that class, you'll see a folder at the bottom of the Lessons tab entitled Unresolved. That is for a student. Okay, it's for a particular student in the class who had especially extenuating circumstances. Okay, so that's not for anybody else. Disregard that. Okay, that student knows who he or she is, so just disregard that. It's not for you. Okay. All right. Housekeeping matters out of the way. This week is going to conclude our review or our look in fiction, and it is going to conclude on the story by D.H. Lawrence, The Rocking Horse Winner. That is in our theme section, chapter 13. And I have the chapters in week 5, okay, from Cengage. All the chapters are there, so you could find the readings within them. Chapter 13, The Rocking Horse Winner. And then I have chapter 16, we're getting into poetry, okay? So we're concluding our look on or of fiction, and this is also a transitional week where we're getting into poetry as well. So our first slate of poems begins with chapter 16, okay? And that chapter is entitled Voice, okay? We're probably going to be able to look at a poem per chapter, okay, because we're getting into having to look at Hamlet a little more in particular in the next week or so, okay? So it's probably going to be a poem per chapter. So for chapter 16, Voice, we have the poem by William Wordsworth, one of the major English Romantic poets of the 19th century. The world is too much with us. I have a question there for you. It's question number 1. Word choice, word order, chapter 17, Living in Sin by Adrian Rich. Adrian Rich, a postmodernist poet of the 20th, 21st century. If you all are watching the show on Hulu, Little Fires Everywhere, the first episode, one of the characters has an Adrienne Rich quote from one of her poems on her T-shirt. Fun fact. Imagery, Chapter 18, Echoes by Hart Crane. Okay, one of a very difficult poet. Okay, his work is difficult to kind of glean the meaning of some of them. There is a movie about Hart Crane, kind of a biopic of sorts, starring James Franco as Hart Crane, and it's called The Broken Tower, if you'd like to give that a watch. I'm pretty sure it's on streaming. And speaking of movies and poets, Sylvia Plath, Chapter 17, Figures of Speech. There is a Sylvia Plath movie that came out 10, 15 years ago, maybe more than that. Gwyneth Paltrow stars as Sylvia Plath, and her husband, Ted Hughes, is played by the most recent James Bond actor, Daniel Craig. There, the name comes to me. So maybe that's worth your time, okay? Just to kind of, I think it's interesting to see some of these people on the big screen. You could visualize them. They are real people, or were real people, okay, doing real work. So sometimes it's interesting and probably compelling and worth your while to see these people dramatized as characters on the big screen. So, to review, 2 questions for the Rocking Horse winner, our last short story by D.H. Lawrence. 1 question under our voice chapter, Chapter 16, The World is Too Much With Us, William Wordsworth. That's number 1. Rocking Horse winner was numbers 3 and 9. Chapter 17, Word Choice, Word Order, Living in Sin by Adrienne Rich, that's number 3. Imagery, Hart Crane, number 3, his poem Echoes. Metaphors by Sylvia Plath, and our chapter, Figures of Speech, number 3. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 questions in all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes. Now, how are you answering these questions? Well, our assignment this week is a discussion forum. Okay, so as the discussion forum says, as the announcement, text announcement says for this week, the discussion forum, your first original post is your answer to each of the 6 questions. So everybody should have a discussion forum post with his or her answers to each of those 6 questions. And then after that, you all, to receive full credit, have to comment on another student's post, okay? Maybe you saw things a different way than that student did. Maybe you want to add something a little bit more to that student's post, okay? These responses should be a little bit more than, good job, so-and-so, I really like your response, okay? They should be more substantive, so so if you want full credit, first you have to give at least 2 posts, and that second post is going to need to be a substantive, meaningful post other than good job, okay? I've been a little lax on some of the other discussion forum posts, but this one I'm going to kind of batten down the hatches and make sure we're all doing what we need to do, okay? So let's talk a little bit about that 2 big assignments we have left. Next week, we have our second literary analysis. By the way, if you haven't received your Flannery O'Connor, A Good Man is Hard to Find, where you were talking about answering the prompt about who has real faith, who are the religious pretenders, that is going to be coming back to you in the first half of the week. Okay, if you haven't received your paperback, it's on its way. I hope to get them all knocked out by Monday. I'm recording this on Easter Sunday. Happy Easter, by the way. So as of you all viewing this, you could expect yours back soon. Okay, next week, we're going to have our second analysis essay, and this is going to be on a poem, one of my favorites. The poem is called Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold, okay? And we'll talk about it more next week. But you could go ahead and read that poem. I think I've given you the page in our announcement, let's give it a little look here. Let's see, week 5. Dover Beach on page 637, okay? It's not a difficult poem in that it's the syntax, the way the words are structured is a little more, it might remind you of more common day or modern day today speech, even though it was written in the later part of the 19th century. My point being, it's not a difficult Shakespearean sonnet or something like that where you have to untangle the syntax and maybe look up the different words and metaphors. We have footnotes there for some of the allusions in that poem, okay? But that poem is all about, at the end of the second half or so of the 19th century, when Queen Victoria is on the throne in England, the Victorian era, okay? One of the main defining features of Victorianism is a loss of religious faith, okay? And, you know, think of Darwin, think of all the scientific findings, revolutions, whatever you want to say. Science is advancing so much that many people feel that the mystery of the world, the magic of the world, is eroding, okay? Well, what do you do if you can't place your faith in, you know, God's majesty of God's creation? What if that is no longer? What if it's all been a lie? Okay, so the Victorians had a crisis of faith. This poem deals with that. What I want you to do when you read this poem is pay attention to the setting. Pay attention to where they are. Okay. And how does that setting affect the tone and theme of the poem? Okay, so I will be more specific with an actual prompt at the beginning of next week, but I do know what I want us to do for our final MLA research essay on Hamlet. Okay, now it's not on the whole play, and Hamlet is a doozy. Okay, after rereading it for you all, I said to myself, man, this is a toughie, okay? However, there is the most iconic lines of all of Western literature. Act 3, Scene 1, lines 63 to 97. Even if you've never read Hamlet before, you've heard to be or not to be. That is the question, okay? So, what I'd like you to do, that is what we're focusing on. So it's not the whole play. It's good to read the whole play so you get a sense of context and where Hamlet is coming from, his relationship to the other characters. In fact, it's critical that you do read the whole play. Otherwise, this is just going to come out of left field and not make much sense to you. But what I ask you to do, how does this soliloquy, a soliloquy is when a character on stage is speaking not to anyone in particular, not to another character, maybe off stage to the audience, but not to a specific character necessarily. Okay, so it's just kind of a unto himself speech. Okay, after you read this and do a little research maybe in Galileo, when you go into Galileo and the literary databases there, you could put in to be or not to be Hamlet or Hamlet soliloquy, Act 3, Scene 1, okay? And you'll get some scholarly research there. But after you've read it, do you conclude that Hamlet is in fact mad or insane? Okay, why or why not? The whole play, Hamlet is described as being mad. Of course, he pretends he's being mad to kind of vex and puzzle and frustrate his uncle, Claudius. Is he really acting, though? Is it all an act? Is he really mad? What about that speech? What is he saying in that speech, to be or not to be? What does that mean? Okay. We'll talk more about it in the coming weeks. But, you know, it's often said that The Lion King from 1993 is kind of a rehash of Hamlet. You could say that. You know, some themes are there. So, you know, there are characters in The Lion King that you could trace to Hamlet. Maybe you could say Simba is Hamlet, okay? And Mufasa is old Hamlet, Hamlet's father. You remember the Lion King when Mufasa is in the clouds and he addresses Simba. He says, "Remember who you are. You have a job to do. You have a responsibility to take the throne of Pride Rock. It's your throne." That's what Hamlet's father's ghost says to Hamlet. "Avenge me." Well, what does Hamlet do? He spends an awful lot of time thinking, okay, instead of acting. Okay, what are the consequences of that? Okay, might the play have been not a tragedy if Shakespeare had, or if Hamlet rather, had taken decisive, quick action? Okay, um, that's just kind of to help you all kind of frame where you or how you want to focus on Act 3, Scene 1, lines 63 to 97. Okay, so 6 questions this week in our discussion forum. And those questions are in the announcement. You'll see the link there, DQS3 doc. Okay, no blog this week. We'll have a blog next week. Next week will be our prompt for our second analysis essay on Matthew Arnold's Dover Beach, page 637, if you want to get a jump on it. And Shakespeare, it's the to be or not to be speech. I have a question there in the bottom of our announcement for week 5. That's going to frame how we approach this final essay. Okay, and I'll give you all the specifications for the essay in the coming weeks, the page length, all that good stuff. Okay, so I hope you all are doing well as you can be. And if you have any questions, let me know. Okay, do email me. I will get back to you. I'm home just like you all are, looking at my screen throughout the day. Okay, so I do try to get back to you in a timely manner. And let's stay strong, guys, and keep on chugging along. And I will talk to you again next week. All right. Have a good one. Bye-bye.